Let's take a look right here. Since the Federal Reserve of the United States is the dominant player, not only is it the dominant player in size, we're now looking at the Fed funds rate. Not only is it a dominant player in size, but more importantly, for the duration of this crisis, which has been going on, remember, according to the Fed funds right here, since 2007. The Fed has had the lead in policy. And it's had more effect than anyone else in the world. Now, this is one chart of the Fed's effectiveness, or at least what the Fed is trying to do. Let's look at another chart. Okay? Okay, here are two charts. The first one, the top chart, I apologize for these charts. These charts are all Bloomberg, by the way. They probably have the best charting system out there. Our mayor, I live in New York, does know what he's doing when it comes to these things. Okay, now these two charts are deliberately two different time frames. This chart is a 10-year time frame. You can see that the Fed started lowering rates 2007. Since the end of 2008, we've been at 0.25 in the Fed funds rate. In fact, the effective rate is much lower. The effective rate is probably about half of that. Well, not quite half. It's probably about 0.16. An effective rate chart looks very much like this, but the rate is lower. This is a 30-year chart of the Japanese central bank rate. If I were a central banker, and I am not, this chart would distress me greatly. But it doesn't seem to distress anybody as far as their policies go. There is an interesting problem here, and it's a problem of bureaucracies. And it's a problem of bureaucracies that have policy goals and that have constraints. And of people, I just watched an old movie from the 80s a couple of nights ago with Kevin Costner and Sean Young and Gene Hackman called No Way Out. Now, it's not a great movie by any means, but it is a very entertaining movie. It gives you a very good idea of what it's like to operate and live within the bubble of a capital city, within the world of government. And government does not operate quite the way we're used to in the private sector. And I don't mean the private sector, I mean everybody else's lives. And I was thinking, as I watched all these characters, that it must, especially at the higher levels, be so easy to get an incredibly grandiose view of your responsibilities, of your power, and of your ability to affect change, to bend the world to where you want it to go. A lot of that, seen historically, is illusion. But to the people operating within that world, especially, as I said, at the higher levels, they have taken various oaths. Oaths used to be a very big deal in the world. I don't know that they are so much anymore. Certainly we have seen many examples of oaths taken as a mere formality, but I won't go into these examples because they might be considered partisan. So within this world, the people who are running the Fed, the people who are running the governments, have taken both oaths to do the best they can, and they bring their policy prescriptions with them. Mr. Bernanke, who I think I've mentioned before, I don't know if for the Americans out there who know what the SATs are, they're a college entrance exam here in the United States, and they're used as sort of as an absolute measure in many cases for your intellectual capabilities and your fitness for various schools. At the time when Mr. Bernanke was taking them, the top score you could get on these SATs was 1,600. There was a verbal section, there was a math section. I got moderately less than that. Mr. Bernanke got 1,600. He scored perfect on both the verbal and the math sections. So this tells you the quality of the intellect, and this is true for many, and I'm sure most, of the upper echelon of government service. Government service is an honorable profession. But its parameters and the things that that its people are constrained to do run by different standards. So, this is the Fed funds rate since 2007. Mr. Bernanke has done this, and the Fed has done this because they felt they had no choice. And in fact, they didn't. You know, the definition of tragedy, theatrical tragedy, is when the inherent characteristics and qualities of the characters lead inevitably to disaster. You might say a good example of that is the road to hell, which is supposedly paved with good intentions. There's an element of that in what has been going on in the world and the world economy since 2007. Or even you could go before that. You could say the entire U.S. housing bubble was created by a surfeit in excess of good intentions. After all, what was the purpose of forcing banks to lend to places, to people who they probably would never have lent to in other circumstances by government pressure? Well, the purpose was to provide people with the ability to buy homes, which is a good purpose. It's a good intention. It's a good political intention. It was indulged in by all parties in the United States and all levels of government. It seemed like a good thing to promote home ownership. However, the policy, once it was rolling, did not recognize any sensible limits. The intention itself became the justification for the policy. But this is not handing out lollipops. It's not giving everyone in your nursery school class, I have 2 young kids, an award for something. This, in fact, operates in the real world. And in the real world, not everyone can qualify for a mortgage. Not everyone is capable of supporting the payments. Not everyone is reliable enough. There are many factors involved here. Those good intentions are equivalent to what the Fed has been doing.